नमस्ते मिनी शास्त्री जी। नमस्ते मधुकर जी।
नमस्कार।
नमस्कार।
Good evening, how are you doing?
I'm fine. Thank you for joining. Is my voice clear to you, sir? Am I audible?
Yes, it is very much clear.
Okay, thank you. In 3 minutes to go, so I think we'll wait for 3-4 minutes more and then we'll start. Good afternoon, Vishal bhai.
Very good afternoon. Good to see you, everybody.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
This is Professor Shakil Ahmed from IUST, Islamic Institute of Science and Technology in Kashmir.
Oh, welcome, welcome. Welcome, sir. Welcome, Mr. George. Welcome, Colin Fernandez. Mr. George, are you able to hear us? Colin?
Hi, hello. I'm Jorge. I can hear you fine and clear.
Thank you. Thank you for confirming. Colin, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Colin, we can hear you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
So, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, and a very warm welcome to all the panelists and participants who kindly agreed to join us today. My name is Mehul Pandya, and I work with the All India Disaster Mitigation Institute as a senior coordinator. And India is experiencing a dramatic shift or surge in heat waves due to climate change and other factors. And it is almost certain that India will face more frequent and more intense heat waves in coming years. So it is well recognized that heat waves are expected to adversely impact health, ecosystems, and India's economy in coming years. And that is why we are meeting today, and we will discuss and understand key perspectives on accelerating extreme heat responses. And we have scheduled, in total, we have 6 presentations today, and they will be made by 6 distinguished panel members. Some of them are from India and some of them are from outside India. And during the course of event today, we will hear from the Rockefeller Foundation, Resilience Center, American Red Cross, United Nations Environmental Program, Aga Khan Agency for Habitat India. We'll also hear from Sphere India and NRDC. And following these presentations, we will have a brief question and answer session and concluding remarks from our director, Mr. Mihir Bhatt. But before we start with the presentations, we would like to announce the release of issue number 213 of our South Asia Disasters.net publication today. And I request my colleague, Mr. Manish Patel, to share the copy in the chat box or just paste the link so that participants can download the issue. And the issue is titled as Accelerating Extreme Heat Responses, Key Perspectives from India. And you'll be happy to know that the publication has articles from UN agencies, state disaster management authorities, universities and research think tanks, local and international organizations, and humanitarian network working in and around India. And the publication covers various extreme heat related issues, such as rethinking heatwave preparedness in India, demanding state level actions, community demands, and utilizing existing government schemes and programs for effective heatwave mitigation and management in India. And we strongly encourage you to please read our publication at your convenience and give us your honest feedback so that we can improve our publications in future. So that was about the launch of our publication, SouthAsiaDisasters.net. And coming back to our roundtable meeting today, I would first like to invite Mr. George Gastel Umendi, Senior Director, Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center, Washington, D.C. And he is recognized climate and environmental policy and finance leader across the world. And with over 25 years of climate and policy experience. Currently, he leads ASTROC's work and its 3 strategic pillars. And he will be discussing about why does India's response matter to global responses related to extreme heat. So thank you so much, Mr. George, for joining today. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Of course, and again, I'm happy to see me here. I'm Manish. Thank you so much for the kind invitation to participate today. I was kindly invited to talk about a global perspective on extreme heat. I would like to start, giving the credit where the credit is. I think we believe strongly at our center that India, at every level, from city level to regional level to national level, it's a global leader on heat governance and heat resilience governance around the world. The amount of cities and states that have developed heat plans, the amount of heat action plans that have been implemented, that have been even revised and checked again. It's a testament to the leadership that you have, and it's very much appreciated around the world how much we can learn from India. Even the system that NDMA has set out for heat governance and management, it's something that it's worth of recognition. And what I'm gonna talk about, what else needs to be done. I think that several of those elements have been already advanced by you, but there are always space to learn. So let me just start. I don't know if I shared my slide deck with you in advance. I don't know if you will be showing that or not, so I can go through the slides, or let me know how you want to manage that.
You want us to show your slides while you speak?
I can. Oh no, I'll do that. That's right. I can.
Okay.
If I can share my screen, I'll do that directly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit early to me. For me, it's like 6 a.m. So
Oh,
my brain wasn't working on the fact that I can share my screen.
yes, please do that. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Thank you. So we've been, briefly, the center has been in existence for the past 5 years. We are a center that has been generously funded by the Rockefeller Foundation and AIDMI. We sit at the Atlantic Council, which is a foreign affairs think tank here based in Washington, D.C., and one of the 16 centers, this one solely focused on climate resilience. And one of our pillars, as you can see here, there are 3 pillars. The first one is to mitigate the effects of extreme heat, and that's what we've been working on. Needless to say that this is something that is becoming more of an issue around the world. You've had this and you've reacted to it as a society in India more aggressively and more actively than many other societies. A lot of societies are waking up to the need to do it. It was an obvious thing in terms of the impacts that heat was posing on health, on infrastructure, and on the capabilities of people to work and operate, but not a lot of action about it. So that's the reason why the Secretary General Office just very recently launched the Global Call to Action on Extreme Heat. This is something that is trying to mobilize actors across the board to take on action on extreme heat. This comes, there has been a lot of reaction to that. The global philanthropic community has come out announcing, about 15 of them announcing that they're going to be putting more resources towards extreme heat. But also there are other actors. The Treasury Department here in the US is trying to mobilize multilateral development banks to do more on extreme heat. USAID has come out with an international call to action as well, along with IFRC, the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent. So there is already a lot of global movement that is trying to raise awareness of this. I do believe, and this is not, I repeated this, but I think I'm going to explain that later, what we did as a center on extreme heat, but I believe that the world could learn a lot from India. So I would just challenge you to be, in addition to all the things that you need to do for your own population in India, challenge to also, consider taking a global leadership role as society to help the world, if that is not much to ask. Now, what we set out to do 5 years ago when we started the center with resources from Rockefeller Foundation, we realized that there was, in the majority of places around the world, there was a lack of understanding at different levels of what heat implied to their economies, to their health, to their incomes, and to their infrastructure, and that we needed to figure out ways in which we can start filling the gaps with the community that has been working actively on extreme heat. So we set out an effort to, let me just go through this very fast, very quickly, but we set an effort to, starting with the orange ones, to see whether the early warning systems that have been set for heat actually addressed the real impacts on people. And we realized that a lot of these systems were targeting basically temperature and humidity without targeting the health underlying conditions and the demographics. So, these alerts were being issued without a clarity in terms of how people were going to be impacted by a heat wave. So we set out an effort to categorize heat waves in a set of cities around the world and try to test algorithms that could actually capture those elements. We also looked into the economic impact analysis and how this affects labor productivity in the US, in India, in Nigeria, but also across 12 cities around the world, to see how their economic sectors, particular economic sectors for each of those cities, could actually would be impacted. And we, came to a conclusion that the economic impacts are vast in the US, in the economy. Only from a factor of labor productivity, the impact will be $100 billion, was $100 billion in 2020, and would quintuple by 2050 to $500 billion. we have used other elements, to bring people into understanding what are the impacts of extreme heat on their health and how they can identify and track people in their communities to support them through a set of games, virtual games, including Minecraft, if you're aware of it. So trying to use, systems that already exist in place to advance this. I'm going to move fast because I know that I don't have a lot of time, but on the blue boxes, we realized that governance around heat was sorely missed. So we launched the idea of chief heat officers, and we've created a network of chief heat officers around the world on 8 cities, but also mobilized mayors around the world to take on more action on heat via the city champion mayors. The community and this AIDMI is we proudly feel that are part of our of this network. We created an alliance, Extreme Heat Resilience Alliance, to bring over 6 organizations from academic to private sector to public sector to discuss what are the opportunities, needs, and chances of collaboration between actors to address gaps in the extreme heat resilience efforts. We created a heat action platform, moving now to the green, to bring all the information existing around the world on how to create heat action plans, how to address impacts on health and infrastructure into a single repository, which is a website that lives in our website, in our center's website, and it's an interactive mechanism. I'll invite you to share that. I'll share the information later with you on this. This heat action platform captures a lot of the lessons and information from India. So we use a lot of that to bring it in. We have looked into how to invest on extreme heat resilience on both infrastructure and nature-based solutions. And finally, wanted to touch upon the extreme heat income insurance. These are the members of the Extreme Heat Resilience Alliance. I'll share, you have this presentation so you can look in more detail here. I just talked about the city champions for heat action as mayors around the world and also chief heat officers. But one thing that we try to target, and with this I'll close, is that extreme heat has a hidden cost. You can see, what the world usually has been targeting at cost for extreme heat, which is on the top of the iceberg above the sea level. In this graphic, a representation of, and it's, usually cooling stations, AC, small scale shelters. But when you start going deeper, you realize that heat has a wider impact on what I was saying before, and it's quite extensive in the economic and financial impacts. On the left side, cost of wider impact from increased health spending, reduced productivity, infrastructure damages. Those are things that economically are really hard to address and that have devastating impacts on GDP growth. But if you look into what is, and that is something that is systemic and will require years and decades to actually address properly for actors around the world, public and private, to internalize the climate risk and the climate costs, including extreme heat as a hazard. What we can do now, immediately, is not stay above the surface, but actually look deeper into the iceberg and try to address the cost of adapting to extreme heat as we do it now. From thinking how investments are going to be done differently, to look into widespread active and passive cooling and economic transformation. And that means that we can start looking into risk measurement, mitigation, and transfer. And that is what we try to do. We're trying to do actively. In this case, we partner with Self-Employed Women Association in India and Blue Marble to I don't know where my screen went. And what we did was figure out how we can transfer the risk posed by heat waves to informal working women that are members of SEVA to the capital markets. How we can bring the insurance sector to understand and appreciate that if we develop a product that could predict heat waves in advance, and at the same time indicate how these heat waves are going to have an impact on income availability for beneficiaries, in this case informal working women, that product actually could be created. So the insurance sector, the local broker ICC Lombard, with Zurich Reinsurance as a reinsurer of this product, they bought the product commercially. They thought, the trigger, the algorithm that you're using actually could fly. We're good with it. We also understand that there is a direct impact that could be proven on lost income. So they decided to go ahead with it. We had to both identify how the premiums were going to be paid. A portion of those were paid very courageously by the members of SEIBA, and a portion was paid by philanthropy. And with that, we launched this idea of having women covered for a specific event, that is heat waves, in particular a heat shock, that then once it happened, they would have resources, financial resources triggered and paid by this insurance to give them a choice, whether they wanted to buy equipment and tools that will allow them to work outdoors even with a heat wave, or stay at home and do not lose that income, that full income, by having a payback that will allow them to take care of their children, or do other activities that will allow them to be protected from a heat wave. So, and we're trying now to move that into further implementation, both in India with SEIBA, but also elsewhere in the world. So I'll stop there. I think that I talked more than what I needed, but happy to answer any questions when we get to that point. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Mr. George, for sharing your views on why does India's responses matter and how working in a network can benefit members by allowing members to learn more quickly and adapt quickly. You raised a very important and thought-provoking question about how the world will finance the cost of adaptation, loss of incomes, and the cost of cooling down. And what role can private sector, for instance, insurance companies can play in managing extreme heat in coming years in India and across the world? So thank you so much for your presentation. And I would like to now invite Mr. Colin Fernandez, Regional Technical Advisor, American Red Cross Thailand. He has almost 20 years of experience on disaster risk reduction and in developing post-emergency DRR programming in South and in Southeast Asia for humanitarian agencies, including the Red Cross, where he is now a Regional Preparedness Advisor for the American Red Cross, which is based in Bangkok. And Mr. Collins will speak about why India's experience is useful to Asia. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Collins.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Mehulji. Can you hear me? Is my audio clear?
Yeah, if you could speak a bit louder.
Hello. Is it okay better now? I'm closer to the mic.
Maybe you can come a bit closer to the mic. Yeah.
Let's do this some other way. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Excellent. I don't need the microphone. Okay. Thank you, Mehulji, as well as Mehirji and AIDMI for inviting the Red Cross on this panel. And really happy to be here and listen to the other panelists and the members on this webinar on heat, and how I can listen to them, how I can learn, as well as see what we can do in the Asia Pacific region where I am engaged with. So just to give a quick overview of where I'm from, I guess it's been quite a while since I've been out of in India, working in regions and different Southeast Asian countries, working with the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement. And just to give an overview how the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement works, it usually work with the national society in respective countries, like the Bangladesh Red Crescent Society or the Nepal Red Cross Society. And they are really our partners when it comes to implementations, as well as we work with the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent, and different other partner national societies like in countries like German Red Cross, etc. And all our work is to work, approach is to work collectively and collaboratively, supporting the National Red Cross Red Crescent Society in implementing and moving programs. Now, for the IFRC, the national societies, and even the American Red Cross, climate change is high on our agenda. It's a priority. We see this as a crisis, and it shows in the increasing temperature and the heat wave. So we also understand the impacts and the implications it is happening, and you read it in the news almost every day. I mean, every year there is record-breaking temperature, whether it's in South Asia, Southeast Asia, even in the Balkans, which I was reading in countries like Macedonia, etc. Uh, reaching high degrees of temperature never experienced before. And there is the science behind it, which says yes, climate, our actions is contributing to this increasing temperature, and it would have been totally different if it wasn't the case. Now, we see the impact on the informal sector. We see it, how it is affecting mental health, physical health. It is decreasing in terms of the people's income, etc. So there are various socio-economics impacts of heat on people. I won't go into a lot of us on this group understand and are quite aware of it. So when I have been working, or I have a presentation, just a moment. Let me move. I'm not used to Zoom, so I apologize for the slowness of okay. Right. So I have a couple of slides. Can you see that? Is it clear?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay. So it's again what Mr. Hore said in his earlier presentation, that the issue of governance. And when we have been working with the different countries in the Asia Pacific region, we see there is a legislative gap when it comes to addressing heat. Not because again it's an evolving risk. Not unlike cyclones or floods, where you see it mentioned as a hazard in the respective country's disaster management law. And when it's mentioned in the disaster management law, definitely there are safeguards and social protections and compensation when people are affected by the respective hazard. But when it's not there, then how do we go about it? And it's really a gray area where national governments and the respective disaster management authorities, etc., are paying attention to. And we have been working, for example, in Indonesia in terms of, okay, how do we move this issue into legislation? I mean, where is the studies? How do we have that evidence base that there is increasing, especially in the urban space, again, which Jorge said in terms of what is. So that is one. So and it's quite common in a number of countries in our engagement. The second aspect which we are focusing on is on anticipatory action or early action. And this is really important, and we have tried and tested in some countries, for example, in Vietnam some years ago, and we are replicating this approach in different countries through our national societies and working closely with the Met departments and the disaster management departments as well. And we see this important in terms of trying to understand, the whole aspect of heat, increasing temperature, what is heat wave, what are thresholds, triggers, and of course setting different actions towards whether it is cash-based or non-cash-based action, so people are able to take the necessary preparedness action before the heat wave starts. But again, heat wave needs to be defined by the countries, and which in some countries is an evolving subject. The third point is this whole awareness of heat and keeping it as a ongoing topic. Now, we also see heat is usually talked about in certain periods of the year because it's really hot. Okay? And then what happens once summer's over, everything goes back to normal and it's all pretty fine, and it becomes a past talk. Now, how do we continue that conversation so that when the heat period is over, that there is preparedness and proactiveness being done, whether it's in policy, programs, or practice, to prepare for the next heat season, because heat seasons are also becoming longer. So we have the whole Heat Action Days, IFRC led on the 2nd of June, where we have civil society, agencies, organizations, governments, and it's picking up every year, and more partners are joining this Heat Action Day. The last point is the heat action plans. And the heat action plans, I will connect it to the topic of my presentation when they say what can we learn from India. And this is something which I think India piloted, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, 2013 in Ahmedabad, because when we are working when we have been working like in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, where Boris talked about the chief health officer developing the heat plans and heat action plans there, where in Nepal, a lot of references is being given to heat action plan. And we look at, the Ahmedabad heat action plan, which was developed years ago, as one as, as a model, as something to learn from how it was done, what are the key sections, the process of developing it. And it's really been one of the blueprints to our actions. That will connect me to my next slide, is what can we learn from India? Now, I am on the outside looking inside into the country where it can really share a lot. Now, there's so much to learn from uh, our country. Uh, and one is the science. I'm not going to speak in that order of the slide, but I'll pick up randomly. It's the science, the technology, and the forecasting. A lot of the neighboring countries, for example, Bangladesh, Nepal, they look at IMD's website or the information coming from the Indian Met Department in terms of preparing for a specific hazard event, whether it's a cyclone, whether it's heat, whether it's flood. So there is a lot of references to say, okay, let us consider the data of the IND and see how we can apply it within our thing. So the Red Cross, the Red Crescent, and the National Society are using that data. And really, the data which is coming out has improved vastly. I mean, the heat index, the thresholds, and this is something where India can work with different neighboring, and I'm quite sure there are as well, with the different Met departments and the respective disaster management authorities in developing this one. I talked about the heat action plan is really becoming a model. More and more national cities, urban cities are replicating it. We have a couple of cities, Nepal and Siddharthnagar in Nepal, replicating it, coming up with the heat action plans. Cities in the coastal belt of Bangladesh are also looking at it, where we are working with the BDRCS. And putting this all together, it's really the proactiveness and the recognition of the issue which the country is taking on heat. It's not, and it's being a simmering issue in heat. It's been slowly growing, and when you look at the data over time, there have been increasing number of deaths, but I think with the proactiveness of the national and state governments on it, in terms of community sensitization, in terms of creating awareness with communities, working with civil society, coordination mechanisms, I think this has had a profound effect on how people are responding, preparing, and being proactive towards the aspect of heat. And again, heat is not a seasonal issue. The impact may be seasonal, but I think beyond that, the preparedness in terms of policy, dialogue, in terms of working with our urban planners, city governments, how we can use that time to prepare better and have more sustainable approaches, as well as nature-based solutions. And there's so much examples around where we can reduce the impact on heat of communities. So I will end with this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Colin, for sharing your valuable insights about why India's experience is useful to other South Asian countries. And you highlighted very important issue of disproportionate impact of heat waves on informal sector economy. You also raised very critical concern or issue about recognizing heat waves in the national legislation. And you also highlighted heat wave action plans that we need to revise every year. and awareness creating awareness should not be a seasonal affair, but it should be, it should go on throughout the year. So thank you so much for your presentation. Next, I would like to invite Shri Minni Sastry, advisor, extreme heat and sustainable cooling, climate change division, United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP in India. Sri Mini Sastry is the UNEP expert for extreme heat planning. She is an architect and green building professional with over 20 years of experience in designing climate responsive built environment, certifying buildings, and developing policy framework for cities to maintain sustainable development. And she will be speaking about urban heat mapping to understand heat risk and mitigating opportunities. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes.
Okay. I am not so sure if I'm able to do full screen mode. Otherwise, I'll try my best. But thank you so much to AIDMI for organizing this webinar, and calling UNEP to share what work we are doing in this regard. Just a second, I will try to maybe, yeah. Yes, so thank you so much once again, because this is a very, very important topic of our times and for our future generations, which is on extreme heat. So I thank AIDMI for organizing this. I will straight away get into a few slides that I have put together today for our discussion. Like, as we all know, and the other two speakers also talked about, extreme heat waves, extreme heat temperatures, record-breaking temperatures have been experienced globally. June 2024 was a 13th consecutive month globally for recording record-breaking temperatures. And across the world, we have been experiencing unbearable heat waves. Temperatures are soaring above 50 degrees Celsius. Recognizing this extreme heat threat, and as the first speaker also spoke about, the United Nations Secretary General issued a global call to action on extreme heat. And he has, the call to action highlights impacts of extreme heat on various sectors, including mortality rates, risks to vulnerable population, how many children globally could not attend school, due to extreme heat. And also he highlights that extreme heat amplifies inequality, inflames food insecurity, and pushes people further into poverty. So it's important that we must respond massively, to extreme heat. And he talks about basically 3 measures that we need to take action on. One of them is access to low carbon cooling. So when we're talking about extreme heat, the vulnerable population, and the risks, the health related risks that they're exposed to. So it's very important. So cooling is a very important sector that one has to look into. However, not the conventional cooling, one must say, and that is what UNEP is focusing upon. So it's important that there is access to low carbon cooling. I will show through my slides in as we go ahead how UNEP is working in India and globally on this. Expanding passive cooling, such as natural solutions, right urban designing, and also cleaning up cooling technologies while boosting up their efficiencies. So mere conventional cooling, one can imagine if all the vulnerable population also start accessing to cooling and cooling through equipments which have very, very poor efficiency. It's a vicious circle. How, as we may cool our indoor environment. However, when we are cooling our indoor environment, we are emitting outside anthropogenic heat. Cities, though we have indoor cooler environment, but we are emitting heat outside, making our cities hotter, and also more emissions are released, in turn heating up our planet faster. So the hotter the planet, the more the energy we need for cooling ourselves. So it's a vicious circle. And when we look at urban areas, and also I would be sharing more of our examples from urban centers that we are working. So when we look at cities, and extreme heat, urban areas definitely are much, much warmer than the suburban areas or the rural areas, or the forests in the outskirts or the farmlands in the outskirts. And hence the vulnerable population in our cities is at much higher risk. Now, why is that? That is, majorly due to the way our cities have been developing. Very dense development, where we are seeing, you can see in this map, for example, the land use land cover map of Bangalore, how it was much, much, much greener and filled with lakes. Now you can only see the built up areas. So the disappearing greens and blues from our cities, while increasing the heat which gets generated in our cities, whether it is through transport sector, congested traffic zones, or whether it is from commercial central business areas, which of course are keep their indoor environments cool, but are constantly emitting heat from their mechanical systems, air conditioning systems. So cities are much, much warmer, and hence are the vulnerable populations are at much higher risk. So what is UNEP doing about it? UNEP has a global cool coalition platform, which serves as a secretariat to the Global Cooling Pledge. If you're aware, that was launched last year during COP, where in the Cool Coalition, we have about 200 partners where we are collaborating on science, on knowledge exchange, advocacy, and joint action to help countries and cities translate their strategies into action. In India, we have an India cooling program where we are working at various levels, from grassroots to city level. So, where we are revising master plans for cities to integrate heat resilience and urban cooling solutions. We are also piloting, high efficient cooling technologies like district cooling, cold chains for food security, which is another sector which gets addressed and impacted badly due to extreme heat. Also, UNEP at central level, we have established the Cool Cities Hub with NIUA, National Institute of Urban Affairs, where we are supporting cities, to integrate urban cooling measures in their revisions of the master plans that are undergoing. I would also like to focus on, this study of Chennai, which we are doing along with our knowledge partner, CEPT University, where we have carried out a very detailed urban heat island assessment, which looks at, if you see on the left side, how the land use, land cover of city has changed. And on the right side, what you see is the temperature map for the city. So this is getting science to address the heat and the vulnerability associated with the heat. So if you see the right side land surface temperature of Chennai city, you can see that Guindy National Park, while is showing 23 degrees Celsius, the airport and certain other commercial areas are 20 degrees Celsius higher than the national park, which is at 43 degrees Celsius. So it's when we start looking at these urban heat maps, it helps us identify what are the hotspots. So if, for example, around the airport, I have a vulnerable population, housing located, then that gives me a scientific background that, yes, this is an area which is vulnerable during heat waves. We are working further with our knowledge partners to go beyond just heat maps, where we are also mapping socio-economic aspects in a city, where we are mapping heat maps along with public transport network, along with, population map, where, where we can identify where are the vulnerable populations, along with, a map which shows where are the health centers located. So that's actually urban heat vulnerability map that we are, trying to develop. And this gives us a basis of then, integrating revisions in the master plan for cities, integrating heat resilient solutions, which, some of us have discussed earlier as well, which are simple, which could be, which are also, well, I would say, monitored and have been established. But of course, once these hotspots are made aware to the city development authority, then through a modeling exercise, one could further establish that, benefits of integrating these mitigation measures, which includes, my earlier speaker also talked about nature-based solutions. So we have seen that nature-based solutions, which is increasing the green and blue infrastructure, can reduce temperature in hot pockets by 10 to 12 degrees Celsius. So, it has huge benefits. Integrating passive cooling or passive architectural design in our buildings would help them reduce their dependence on air conditioning, and hence, comfort could be achieved indoors most of the times of the year. And as I said earlier, lesser the dependence on air conditioning, lesser the heat emitted to the planet, and, lesser we are contributing for warming up of our cities. Street landscape and street geometries also play a very important role. So these, of course, what I'm talking about are majorly long-term mitigation measures. And, of course, in heat action plans, most of them, which, focus on short-term mitigation measures like having cooling shelters and, the first aid kits, water availability. However, these are long-term measures which would really help cities, further have a track, and further increase of temperatures could be avoided. And hence, we are UNEP, is majorly focusing on working with cities into these long-term measures, which could be integrated and implemented once integrated in the revised master plan. So as I was saying, street landscape and geometry. So, you can imagine a street where, it's densely built, where we cannot see the sky. Of course, the heat is retained within these streets, and because, sky acts as a heat sink. However, if the streets are well shaded, or streets are wide enough to lose the heat to the night sky, that's the right kind of approach. And that's the right kind of approach we are trying to look into when we are, partnering with cities for revisions in their master plans. Use of cool surfaces, one can see in this, old city, one of the cities of Santorini city in Greece, one of the islands, which is trying to address heat by reflecting it back. And several cities in India also now looking at making cool roof as one of the mandatory regulation. And so these are at building and city level. However, transport, as I said earlier, enhance public transport, look at more sustainable modes of transport, which would help reducing emissions and warming up of the climate. As well as we are looking at reducing anthropogenic heat from air conditioning. And as I said in my earlier slide, for example, district cooling is a great solution, not only for achieving efficiency in cooling, but also reducing urban heat island effects in the cities. So finally, certain recommendations from our work that we are doing globally in cities, in various countries in Asia and in India, is that it is also to prevent further warming up of our cities and our planet. Action plans. Heat action plans are great, but however, a lot of them do not have urban heat vulnerability mapping, and hence integration of heat vulnerability mapping would take them to the next level of integrating resilience in the cities. Revisions of master plans, to integrate urban cooling measures and mitigation measures. Revisions in building regulations, including, for example, like cool roof or shading, certain passive measures which should be integrated in building regulations in order to reduce the air conditioning demand from the building sector. Awareness and capacity building of city officers is also very important, so that they are aware of the existing tools in the public domain to have the right measures in their city designing and also building regulations. And finally, having the right innovative financial models, which could also be innovative enough for those private sector players who can really showcase by bringing nature-based solutions and all the right measures into their new development plans. The real estate industry should be given the right kind of innovative financial or non-financial incentives for for showing the right path and for getting motivated to integrate heat resilience in their developments. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Miniji, for educating us on urban heat mapping and helping us understand heat-related risks, including mitigation opportunities that exist. You explained why our cities are getting warmer and what can be done about it. And you not only highlighted problems, but also solutions that we can look at for cooling down. So thank you so much for your presentation. Now I would like to invite Sri Madhukar Saraf, Head of Emergency Management and Developmental Programs at Aga Khan Agency for Habitat India. He has over 23 years of experience in climate risk, disaster risk reduction, and environmental sustainability. And he has established extensive expertise through collaboration with governmental bodies and international humanitarian organizations. So I welcome you, Madhukarji, and I request you to be brief and please take around 8 to 10 minutes maximum to summarize your presentation and thoughts. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hi, good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone, and thank you, AIDMI team, for organizing this roundtable discussion. In fact, today I'll be discussing on unheard voices of India's heat waves demand from the front lines. So, this is based on the few studies which we have done and our ground level experience while working with the most marginalized communities in India. So, as most of you are aware that India is experiencing the most, I'll say, is worst heat waves in recent history. The past few years have been seen a significant increase in heat-related illness and death, with the most vulnerable population bearing the brunt of the impact. The elderly, children, outdoor workers, and those living in poverty are disproportionately affected by the heat waves, which can worsen existing health condition, reduce productivity, and even lead to the loss of the life. So in this presentation, I'll be highlighting the key learning from the field and what are the demands are from the frontline communities and the proposed solutions to it. So when we say that heat waves is one of the growing concern in India, with the country experiences a rise in frequency, duration, and intensity of the heat waves over the past few decades. According to the Indian Meteorological Department, the country has witnessed around 200% increase in the heat waves days between the 1970 and 2023. The economic and social impact of heat waves are significant, with estimated loss ranging from 2 to 4% of the Indian GDP. So that's the reason that despite of the growing awareness of heat waves in India, there is a lack of attention to the experience and demands of the most vulnerable population. And these individuals and communities are often the first to be affected by the heat waves, but their voices are really heard in policy discussions and decision-making processes. So I'll be primarily focusing the discussion on based on our consultation, which we have done with the migrant workers, street vendors, farmers, urban slum dwellers, and indigenous community across the country, and we'll explore their experiences of the heat waves, their demand for support and protection, and the policy implication of their voices in the today's presentation. So when we talk about these unheard voices, so it's very important to identify them. And so who are these particularly? So these are primarily the rural communities living in remote areas with limited access to the basic amenities like clean water, sanitation and healthcare facilities. Rural communities are disproportionately affected by the heat waves. Then farmers, particularly small and marginalized farmers, are the prime members are getting exposed to it. There are multiple examples from Maharashtra, Telangana, and other drought-prone areas where the farmers are significantly getting affected because of the increased heat waves in the geography. Another LCKK critical marginalized population is migrant workers, where millions of the migrant workers travel to city in search of the work, often live in a makeshift settlement without access to the basic amenity, like even basic thing like shared water and healthcare. During our study, like vacant city of Delhi, particularly, the thousands of migrant workers live in the makeshift settlement like Yamuna, Posta slums, where they work as a construction labor, domestic workers, and street vendors. During heat waves, they often have to work for the longer hour in scorching sun without having access to the shade, water, or cooling facilities. Then for the women and children, particularly women, especially those for the low income household, are often responsible for collecting water, cooking, and caring for family members, making them more vulnerable to the street waves. The elderly and people with disability is another key category under it, where the older adults and individuals with disability may have a limited mobility, making it difficult for them to access cooler places or seek medical attention during the heat waves. Street vendor is another key category of the community members who are getting directly affected due to the increased heat waves. Among them, mostly women who spend long hours in a scorching sun, selling fruits, vegetables, and other essential with little or no protection from the heat. We have the examples from Mumbai, Chennai, or even like other metro cities, particularly how the street vendors are selling the vegetable on street from even from 6 a.m. to the 6 p.m. without having any shade or cooling facility around them. Then the large population in an urban area particularly is linked with the urban slum dwellers, people staying in a slum settlements, often live in cramped, poorly ventilated conditions with inadequate access of the healthcare, sanitation, and cooling facilities. Indigenous communities, another one, living in remote areas, facing unique challenges in accessing healthcare information and resources to the cope with the heat waves. Our findings are particularly highlighting the few critical demands from the frontline workers, and these demands are specifically highlighting the need to get access to the basic amenities, social protection, and climate resilient infrastructure to mitigate the impact of the heat waves. And especially when I discuss in detail, so that's with regard to the access to the shade and cooling facility, because most of the public cooling centers or shaded areas where people can accept the heat, especially during the peak hours, though it is a migrant worker and street vendors demand access to the shade and cooling facilities such as a community center, public spaces, or even the misting systems. There are some initiatives are taken up in Chennai and Ahmedabad by the municipal corporation for cooling centers in public spaces and provided the shade to the migrant and street vendor, but this is not a case across all the other metro cities or even like the class 2 city particularly. Second one of the demand has come for the clean water and sanitation because reliable.
Madhukarji, if I may request you to please summarize your presentation in next 1 minute, please, because we are running a bit late. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So the another LCK critical demand has come on the clean water and sanitation. Then heat waves early warning system is important, where the people can get the timely alert on the increased temperature. Then the heat stress prevention and treatment is very important. Social protection and compensation mechanism is also equally important over here. And ultimately, because this climate resilient agriculture and climate resilient infrastructure planning is very much important to address the need of the frontline community at the ground level. Within that, 3 case study was done by us. One is about the Mumbai Heat Action Plan, Telangana Farmer Insurance Schemes, and community-led initiative, which was taken up in Ahmedabad, and which has given the LCK good learning about how the city administration has introduced the more democratic and decentralized system, so the local community can get the early warning information and provisioning of the cool drinking water and shades for the community, along with the public awareness campaigns. So within that particularly, as I highlighted, the major demand has mainly come for the access to basic amenities, social protection, and community resilient infrastructure. So the prioritization is very much required for it. And to close this, the initiatives need to be very comprehensive and inclusive, where the community-led initiative need to be taken. There has to be strong support of the community for the people who are actually facing the crisis on the roads. Their requirement need to be heard. The climate resilience urban planning need to be done, and more public awareness is also important. And there is also another important part is about the data-driven decision making, how the technology can be used for early warning or decision making is very important. So with this, I think the demand of the frontline community can be integrated effectively, and it need to be part of the various policy steps, whether it is a city developmental plan, climate action plan at the city and district level. So the need of the frontline communities need to be accommodated as a part of the overall planning. So it will become more as an inclusive approach. So with this, I'll close my points here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madhukarji, for showing us the demand side of heat wave mitigation and management in India. And our second last speaker for today's event is from Sphere India, Sri Michelle Mohan, and she works as a manager for knowledge and capacity sharing at Sphere India. She is a climate researcher and analyst with a strong focus on climate adaptation, disaster governance, and risk reduction. So, may I invite Michelle ji? And again, I request you to be brief and summarize your presentation in 7 minutes or so. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mehulji, for the introduction, and also once again, thanks to AIDMI for organizing this panel and also inviting us to be part of this panel. I'll keep my intervention very brief, focusing on what we have done as a network in the past couple of years in terms of heat wave preparedness and resilience building. So for those who are not aware in the participants, Sphere India is a national coalition of humanitarian agencies in India, and our members mostly focus on disaster risk reduction, response, and resilience building across the country. And it is mostly through the earlier COVID-19 Academy, and since 2022, the Sphere India Academy, that we do thematic sessions on various emerging priorities in disaster management and resilience through our network. And these sessions are conducted both online and in person, and also thematic trainings as well as a webinar series. So in terms of community needs, my previous speakers have touched upon the challenges due to heat wave and also emerging needs from the community. In terms of understanding community, some challenges related to heat wave preparedness and response that we face is the lack of accurate information and data related to heat, including health impacts and health system capacities, and also limited information on the institutional mechanisms for heat wave mitigation, and lack of awareness and limited interagency coordination for heat wave response as compared to other disasters in India. And of course, heat wave is still not notified as a natural disaster in India. And since the past couple of years, there has been a significant increase in heat wave being a priority for response and resilience within the network that we have seen. And it is towards this that we have identified community needs in terms of especially specific vulnerable communities who are impacted more by heat waves, and building their resilience, preparedness, and also response to ongoing heat waves. So we collaborated for a series of sessions on heat wave mitigation for schools, informal economy workers, for specific sectors like shelter, and also on what are the heat stress management protocols as per the national guidelines. And these were simplified for a wider audience that we have through the Sphere India Academy, that are humanitarian workers, community volunteers, and also community members from different states across India. And we disseminated heat wave do's and don'ts. While there is no dearth of IEC materials that we currently have on heat waves, it still is essential for to share the heat wave do's and don'ts to a wider community that is both in alignment with the messaging from different government agencies, and also as the continued duration of heat wave is ongoing in the country back then. And we partnered with several local organizations and government bodies for targeted and contextualized responses. This included heat sessions in specific languages and also for specific sections of the population, and simplified strategies in terms of local traditional seasonal foods, traditional architectural design interventions to be included for future planning, and also health system capacity building for managing health related impacts. All of these were covered as part of this series. So we collaborated for this series with the Center for Disaster and Health of National Institute of Disaster Management and AIDMI for these sessions. So what's initially started as an emergency preparedness session on heat wave evolved into a series that covered informal economy workers and how what measures they can take for managing heat waves, heat wave impacts on mitigating these for infrastructure, environment, and technological solutions for this, and also education and safety for schools and children, and also mental health and psychosocial impacts of heat waves. This was also something that came up as part of feedback from our participants, and also priorities emerging from within the network. We also conducted a couple of regional language sessions on heat wave awareness, impacts, and strategies. So IEC materials that I mentioned, we developed and was shared widely across the network. And since the past couple of years, we have been creating this repository of adding all of these IEC materials and webinars to our YouTube channel and also our website, to ensure that whenever there is a warning, we can share this widely across our network. In terms of long-term advocacy and resilience for heat wave abatement now that we are in the period past heat waves, it would be essential for community-based risk reduction that leverages local knowledge and also advocates for more inclusive heat wave management practices, early warning systems, and also capacity for our communities' systems, infrastructure systems, and health systems to act on these early warnings for preparedness and response, and health system capacity building, as I mentioned, and also integrating heat stress management into existing development programs, housing schemes, and livelihoods, and also improved research on how to guide and implement policies that are part of heat action plans, and also strengthening emergency response and improving the government NGO coordination, resource pooling, and leveraging data that we currently have for effective heat wave management. Back in 2022, Sphere India conducted joint rapid needs assessment for understanding the impact of heat waves for the state of Bihar, Delhi, Madhya Pradesh, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Uttar Pradesh. This is something that we do as a practice for other disasters, but taking it as an SOP and understanding better how exactly heat wave impacts these sectors would be helpful. And the repository I mentioned of how we are collating these very simple videos from our webinars on doctors instructing to the participants how to create ORS solutions at home, how newborn children can be, what is the impact of heat waves on newborn children, and what are the care strategies for healthcare workers and also people. Uh, and these are something that we have put together, and that's very briefly on what we have been doing the past couple of years.
So thank you so much, Michelle ji, for sharing so many measures that the Sphere India members are taking in India. And also thank you for sharing some very practical recommendations with us today. Last but not the least, I would now like to invite Shri Abhyan Tiwari, Lead Health and Climate Resilience, NRDC India. Shri Abhyan Tiwari is the Lead Climate Resilience and Health Consultant at NRDC India, and his interests include environmental, climate, and disaster risk to public health, and he works to advance evidence-based adaptation and mitigation policies and actions in these areas. And he'll be speaking about demanding state-level action in India for effective mitigation and management of heat waves. So over to you, Abhiyanji. Thank you. And please conclude your presentation within 7 to 8 minutes. Thank you. So that we can have a good question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mehulji. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Yes, sure. I'll try to conclude as soon as possible, although the previous presentations were very intriguing and very useful. And just let me know if my screen is visible.
Yes, it is visible.
Sure. So I'll just quickly run through some of the experiences that we have learned in India from, heat action planning and working. A lot of speakers previously talked about the Ahmedabad Heat Action Plan, the pioneering work from South Asia. So I'll be quickly touching upon that work also. Needless to say about the importance of the issue. So I'm Abhiyan Tiwari. I work for NRDC India, which is associated with a non-profit called Natural Resources Defense Council, based out, headquartered in United States. And we have been working on the issue of public health, environment, climate change, equity for more than 5 decades in US and across the globe. And we have been working in India for more than a decade now. Temperatures are rising, no doubt on that. And that small shift in the average temperature means we are having more heat and extreme heat days. How does that translate? That translates into increase in the health risks. So we are seeing hundreds and thousands of people, deaths being attributed due to increase in the temperature. And where those majority of deaths are happening, again, happening in the regions which are more vulnerable to extreme heat, particularly where we come from, the South Asia and Southeast Asia. And not just what happened in past, the future projections are also alarming. Like in current 2 degrees Celsius, warming scenario, by mid of this century, there could be 370% increase in the heat-related mortalities. So code red for health or era of boiling that, the Secretary General of United Nations, who recently called for the action on extreme heat, are very much a reality now. It's no more a future scenario. It's almost a reality now. And again, as I mentioned, majority of these impacts will be seen in global south, in South Asia, Southeast Asia region, and in Africa. Not just health, it is also impacting the other sectors of economy. For example, what are the different sectors that are getting impacted because of the rising heat? Agriculture is one of the major sector, and countries coming from the low HDI and medium HDI, index countries are being impacted the most. India, being an agrarian country, is among those which are getting impacted the most because of the heat, and that is resulting in billions of workers being exposed to extreme heat, and billions of dollars being lost because of the exposure to heat. I'll quickly run through it. Another context to this, which previous speakers also mentioned about, is the urban context. So our cities are warming at twice the rate compared to the rural areas, and more than 40% of Indian population, or rather more than 70% of global population, will be living in urban areas by mid of this century, and 60% of infrastructure for that future urban population is yet to be built. So that is somewhere we have a game to change. I'll talk about quickly some of the examples that India has set in being a leader leader on the extreme heat. So Ahmedabad Heat Action Plan, the first South Asian city-wise comprehensive heat action plan, was put in place in 2013 after the devastating experience of an extreme heat wave event in 2010. And I'm very thankful to AIDMI, particularly Mihir sir, who is there with us. I guess he'll be concluding our event today. So so this work was supported by NRDC, was one of the pioneering institution in this pioneering work, along with the city government and the local knowledge partners, Indian Institute of Public Health, Gandhinagar, and others. But CDKN supported this entire work, and Mir sir was the senior advisor to CDKN and who guided us and supported this entire initiative. This work become an example. We talk about the chief heat officers now, but this heat action plan was the one that introduced what a chief heat officer or a nodal officer really means. So the first nodal officer who worked on this heat action plan is still the nodal officer of this heat action plan, who is spearheading the early warning system and interagency coordination in this entire initiative. There are, this action plan was developed on, very simpler, tailor-made solutions, like early warning systems, interagency coordination, public awareness, general public awareness, and reaching out targeted communities, building capacity of the key stakeholders, for example, medical professionals, but others as well, for example, education department, labor department, transport department, and others. And then also incorporating the longer term solutions to reduce the heat exposure and promoting the adaptive measures among the communities, for example, cool roof. As a result, the city was able to avert more than 1,100, heat-related deaths annually after the implementation of heat action plan, and that got scaled with the support of national agencies like National Disaster Management Authority, the India Meteorology Department, the Health and Family Welfare Department, to across the country in 23 heat-prone states and several cities across the country. But eventually we realized, and one of the recent study also highlighted this, that there are still some gaps in the heat action plans. They are not, majority of the heat action plans across the country are not tapping on the local, heat hazard mapping. Like there is no local thresholds being identified for the local heat health early warning systems. What is heat at 40 degrees Celsius in Pune may be different to what is heat at 45 degrees or 8 degrees Celsius in Churu in Rajasthan. So those things need to be identified. There was majority of the heat action plans lacked mapping of the vulnerable communities, the vulnerable geographies across the cities and across the administrative boundaries. So those were the things that were highlighted over a period. And that's where we try to address such issues. So one of the recent work that we did in a tier 2 city called Jodhpur, again from the western part of the country in the state of Rajasthan, was development of the heat action plan with the Jodhpur Municipal Corporation. A local non-profit called Mahila Housing Trust initiated the work. They did some community engagement and pilot demonstration of heat and cooling resilience interventions, and demonstrated that to the local urban local bodies, and then that was being catched by the urban local bodies, and they were ready to they asked in RDC and the Mahila Housing Trust to come up with a comprehensive heat action plan. And this was the first time when a tier 2 city, when I say tier 2 city, they are the growth engines. We have limited scope of, um, planning for the cities that are already being developed, for example, Delhi, Mumbai, or Bangalore. But these tier two cities are still growing. They are the growth engines. So we still have a scope of, when I said 60% of infrastructure for the future urban population is yet to be built. They are the places. I mean, these are the cities where we can still, build for a future urban heat resilient infrastructure. So for Jodhpur heat action plan, we did a ward level heat vulnerability assessment and came up with, a ward level heat risk index. Cities divided into 80, different wards, and came up with indexes of different ward using, more than 14 indicators, including, percentage of women population in a particular ward, percentage of slum population, percentage of elderlies, percentage of access to health facilities, access to parks, and many other indicators were included in coming up with this comprehensive index, so that the decision makers, the city authorities can deploy the limited resources based on the evidence. Another thing, we all talk about the heat, about the early warning systems, but the major gap in the early warning systems is that from the generators of the early warnings to the receivers of the early warnings, there is a gap. Those who are truly in need of the early warnings may often fail to receive it. So that's where, again, our community, organization helped us in taking the information from the meteorology department to the most vulnerable communities in their own language. So whenever there were heat alerts or heat wave alerts and warning were issued, they were translated into the local languages and being, shared with the local communities. These are some of the examples of early warnings and public awareness initiatives being taken in the communities in the Jodhpur. The cool roof solutions, other passive cooling mechanisms that has been put in place, which is not just providing the vulnerable communities, slum women, relief from the heat, indoor heat, but also providing them, opportunity to get some livelihood options, because they are trained to do this in the community. So they are, putting this on place in many other households and generating income from that. And it is also helping them in reducing their energy costs for cooling. Another unique solutions that has been put in place this year in Jodhpur heat action plan. By the way, Jodhpur heat action plan came into place in 2023 itself. This is the second year. One of the unique solutions that has been put in to the place this year was this unique, first of its kind, net zero cooling solution. I'll quickly run this video and what does this look like. So, as I mentioned, this is first of its kind. It's net zero, but there is a lot of R&D that can happen on such kind of solutions, and it's effective. When we analyze the impact of this particular, innovation, the temperatures during the peak hours were more than 12 degrees Celsius lower in within the cooling stations compared to the outside. And overall average temperatures were more than nearly 8 degrees Celsius lower in the cooling stations compared to the outside. This was first of its kind. A lot of R&D can happen to bring the cost down to make it more efficient. But yeah, these are the kind of solutions that we need to put in place through our heat action plans going further. Good part is that countries with effective early warning systems have 8 times lower mortality rates from disasters compared to the countries that do not have effective early warning systems in place. Yeah, I'll rest my remarks here, and thank you so much. I'm happy to take questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Mr. Tiwari, for the excellent presentation and time management. And I think the question that I remember from your presentation is that, we need to remember that question and we need to try to answer that, whether our heat actions plants are ready to address extreme heat. So floor is open for question and answer now. And I think we already have 3 to 4 questions in our chat box. And Mini Sastri is asking, who financed the cooling station? So probably I think she's asking you, Abhyanji.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks, Vinny, for asking that question. So this pilot work was financed through the project work. But the good part is that now city is ready to invest into it, and city is willing to have many such, cooling stations at the places with high footfall. So the place was provided by the city government. They provided us the space, like here is the space which has high footfall, and please, put your cooling station over here and demonstrate it. And if it is effective, we'll have it more. So now they are willing to invest into not just cooling station, but for the entire heat action plan. And that's how we, institutionalize the heat action plans through showing the local impacts and local evidence base. So yeah, this one was through project, but now city is ready to invest into it.
Thank you so much for the response. Uh, Hira Tari from Bangladesh is asking, I think to Miniji, which tool was used to assess the heat vulnerability of the communities? If you could please respond to that.
Though I don't think it is for me, but anyways, because I think Abhyant has also shown for communities, we have used satellite data for the land surface temperature, the Landsat satellite data, and QGIS. Our partners are using QGIS as a GIS platform to map various datas. So that's what we have been using. Everything is available in the public domain, what we have been using.
Thank you so much. And I think there were a couple of questions for George as well. What can be done for greater coordination and where to invest? If you could please respond. Thank you.
Sure. I gave a couple of answers already in the chat, so we can save some time there. On where to invest, from our experience, one of the things that it's really hard to identify is funding sources for infrastructure. So when we talk about green areas and blue areas, the majority of those investments are public investments. They don't have a return on investment from the private sector. So I think where we need to invest on is identifying ways in which we can bring the private sector to start investing, or look into other financial tools that are available in the private sector, such as insurance. So because public money is not going to ever be enough for this problem. We need all society effort. So ways in which you can start tapping on private financial resources, being that insurance in this case, as the case that I explained. Mahila Housing Trust also has done an effort on that. But then how can you bring other financial resources, from a private sector to invest on green areas and blue areas? Those are, I think that's where we need to crack the nut. How can we make the private sector internalize the risk of extreme heat and see what's the value for them to invest on their own businesses, but also on the benefit of communities? If we can crack that nut, I think a lot of solutions could be found, including technology and other kind of investments that we don't have available at this point. So that's That's what I would think. The tools we have, the science so far we have, not fully, but it's a money that it's gonna be lacking.
Thank you so much for the response. And I think the last question, Abhyunji, again for you, I think, what is the durability of cooling station in rainy season? And how is the upcoming heat wave is being disseminated in India to local communities? If you could just briefly respond. Thank you.
Sorry, Mehul bhai, can you come back? Can you
Yeah.
ask?
What is the durability of cooling station in rainy season? And how is upcoming heat wave is being disseminated in India to communities? Thank you.
All right, great. So these are two different questions. So on durability part, as I mentioned, this was, first pilot and first of its kind cooling station. So we are trying to figure out how to use it during other, other weather seasons. It's being utilized as a shelter. Currently also it's been utilized as a shelter. I also saw a question like who is managing it. So currently it is the non-profit that worked on developing it with is managing it. But we'll have more clarities, we'll have more learnings, and maybe that will help us develop SOPs around how to operate a cooling station or a shelter, I would rather say, not just cooling, but yeah, primarily cooling remains as a, for example, through this that NCRMP, the National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Program, we had a lot of cyclone shelters across the country, throughout the coastal regions. How are they being utilized when there is no cyclone? So those are also being learnings that we can learn from, and uh, kind of it was a huge program. It is a huge program being funded by World Bank. So that we'll learn from in future, like how can we better utilize such shelters. And on part of how the heat waves are being disseminated, upcoming heat waves. So India Meteorology Department, if we call heat wave as per the definition of the meteorology departments, India Meteorology Department has a very classified definitions and mode of communication for and level of forecasting for seasonal, medium term, short term, forecasts that are being available, and they are disseminating it through various platforms, through their social media handles, through communicating to proper administrative channels, like sending it to the municipal corporations, to the district collectors and magistrates, and also putting it in public platforms which anyone can access. So there are means of platforms through which the heat wave forecasts are being disseminated by the meteorology department. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Abhiyanji. May I now request Mihir sir to conclude and deliver vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehul bhai, and thank you the panelists for finding time to share with us your experience and direction. And I think I'd like to focus on areas of investment and funding and finance, because we saw a variety of very good experiences, innovations, experiments. So creativity at that end is not lacking. What is lacking is support to that creativity and urgent challenge to address that. And extreme heat is too big a challenge to address in isolation, individually or institutionally. So we all must join hands and find common ground to cooperate and collaborate. So what have we learned in terms of future funding, investment, future areas to be supported? And from each of the panelists, I've picked up many, but I'll mention one key point for area for investment. For the excellent presentation by Jorge about the experience of India and how that is useful for the rest of the world. I think the main point for investment or financing or funding is that the poverty, unemployment, and social assistance, including insurance, for extreme heat affected population, especially women, as I said, across the world is an urgent need. And that's something if we have to prioritize and put things in order, that's something I've picked up for our purpose for future investment and funding. The second thing I've picked up from Mr. Colin Fernandez from American Red Cross is that we need to find ways to target funding during extended and widespread extreme heat in agriculture, industry, and other sectors in Asia Pacific. And that's something I'm taking back as a message to investors, donors, funders, public sector, and private sector. And it could be very easily done by private sector as well if they start thinking differently. The third is protecting from impact of extreme heat on urban water and sanitation with nature positive investments. And that is something I picked up from Ms. Mini Shastri of UNEP about the work that she was describing, especially in the urban areas. So that's something which is, very important to invest. And there are public sector money for water and sanitation, but not to protect it from the extreme heat. So that's something that needs to be worked out. The fourth area that has come from Madhukar Sanapji from Aga Khan Agency is to fund the design and develop systematic and system-wide strategic action research around extreme heat to capture voices of excluded and affected population in low-income slums and exposed habitat, especially. So those are the hotspots we know will be very badly affected in any case. Doesn't need more research or study or policy work. We just know that's where it's happening, and that's where the investment should go first, according to Mr. Madhukar Sanna. The fifth area is to promote humanitarian networking, both high science and technology, as well as day-to-day living science and technology for cooling measures, as Ms. Michelle Mohan of Sphere India has pointed out, that the better we network, faster we network, effectively we network, the solutions will be widespread. They will reach a certain scale. They will reach a tipping point by such networking and will be able to make a major difference. So that's an area where a lot of investment is needed. And the sixth area, and last from Dr. Abhiyant Tiwari, is the support local adaptation measures in Tier 2 cities, which are fast growing but smaller in size, and net zero cooling stations, for example, as adaptation measures and help them move out of fossil fuel dependency at community level. So while globally discussion may be going on to find a way out of fossil fuel, such as solar energy and other sources, I think at a local level, we need to support and invest in the areas which will help us move away from that dependency, as Dr. Abhiyant Tiwari said. I think these are the 4 or 5 areas, well, actually 6 areas. You all can add to that for your purpose. But that's what something I would request AIDMI to take it further to both the donors and private sector as a follow-up from this particular sessions that we have had, and see that it is recognized adequately at the COP29 financing discussions as well, because these are the 6 important areas where work is being done successfully. It just needs more money to upscale it and scale it. Thank you very much, Mehul Bhai, for this opportunity. And I thank each of the panel member and all the participants, each of the participants for joining this topic, which is so urgent and so important and needs leadership at all levels. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Again, all the panelists and participants for joining us today. Thank you so much. And before you leave, if you could please switch on your video, you'd like to capture some images of the webinar. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
again.
you. Bye-bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.